Hi there, part two. I wanted to talk to you more about my sister's death in Lake County, Waukegan, Illinois, April 9th, 1988. I wanted to go back to some details about some things that I had mentioned in my first video. And the first detail is I would like to say that in my first video I had mentioned that Carlos Whitlock had mentioned that he would throw my sister in front of a train. He had never mentioned a train, but he did say that he would make her pay. That is in the inquest. He would make her pay for holding out on him. And so I just wanted to mention that was stated, and that a train was never mentioned. But he was the last known individual to be with my sister Cheryl, April 9th, 1988. He had picked her up from Laura Littner's house at about approximately between 11 a.m. and let's say 11:30 a.m. April 9th, 1988. He then was witnessed by a factory worker, Robert Walden, at 11:40 a.m. because he said he checked out at 11:40 a.m. precisely, but it would take him a couple of minutes to get to his vehicle, get in the vehicle, and so about 3 minutes. So let's say 11:43 a.m. At approximately 11:48 a.m., my sister Cheryl Miller was struck by the train. That is a 5-minute between when she was last seen and being struck by the train, and the last person seen with her was Carlos Whitlock. Now, let's go back to the inquest. The second inquest, so nobody's ever heard of my sister's death because it was never investigated. So this case is sat open in Lake County, Waukegan, Illinois for 33 years. Not investigated whatsoever. Never even looked at, probably never even acknowledged, doesn't even matter. Nobody even heard about this. Nobody even heard about Cheryl Ann Miller Bluma and how she died. So when the conductor came upon her body about 150 feet away from the station at 40 miles per hour, the conductor said when he came upon her, her arms were folded across her chest and her eyes were closed and her head was rested on the rail and she was in between the rails. So in my opinion, she was posed. Her blood alcohol level contents were astronomical. The urine was 0.832 and her blood levels at one point were 0.410. And the coroner had stated that, and I want you to understand that the autopsy performed on my sister was April 11th, 1988, 2 days after she had passed and was hit by that train. So her blood alcohol level content was that high 2 days after her death, and she was in the coroner's office, waiting to be autopsied on. And so we have those facts, and we have those. Let's go back to the inquest where I had mentioned that there was a black male, unidentified, with Carlos Whitlock that day. And that same evening, a Maria Chavez was shot in a tavern by Hector DeJesus. Now, let's talk about Hector DeJesus. He shot her. He shot Maria Chavez in the neck twice with a 9mm. They were having a dispute, they said, in the tavern, and so he's going to be paroled in 2047, and I believe that he may have been the unidentified black male with Carlos Whitlock that picked my sister Cheryl up from Laura Littner's that morning. And mind you, Jordy's said that Cheryl and Maria Chavez, Alabama Mary, were together getting the hot dog and fries, okay, that morning. And so Cheryl and her parted their ways that day. that morning, and their fate ended up being their death that day. And so, by two different men. Okay, Carlos, I believe, was the one that put my sister on those tracks and posed her. You know, I want to go back to the inquest, because in the second inquest, they had mentioned a Mary Bell. I don't know who Mary Bell is. Mary Bell was never mentioned throughout any of the first inquest, and then the second inquest, Mary Bell was mentioned a couple of times by the judge. Now, there was never anything ever mentioned about a Mary Bell up to any of this point other than being in my sister's inquest. It was a Maria Chavez that was associated with my sister, not a Mary Bell. I don't know who Mary Bell is or why she's been mentioned in my sister's inquest. So I guess that is my next attempt in finding Mary Bell. That could be also another stage name for these women, had stage names for what they were doing with their lives. Again, I need you to understand, nobody has ever heard of my sister's case because it was never investigated. It was never on the media. It was never in anything other than the paper of her death. There was never follow-ups. There was never an investigation done by the Lake County, Waukegan, Illinois Police Department. And so her case has stayed unsolved for 33 years. And I did send it to Chicago's Missing Cases. I did send it. I don't know how many other people have died on Lake County, Waukegan, Illinois tracks there from the station. You know, like 150 feet to 250 feet away from that station, either direction. How many people have died there? You know, were they all women? Were they all posed? That is my next question. Were they like this? You know, and my sister, Cheryl, obtained her birth certificate that prior day on the 8th, 1988, from the Waukegan Post Office. She had picked it up. And, you know, and the Lake County Waukegan Coroner's Office was ruled out the first inquest as a suicide, and then it was disputed because she would never commit suicide. She never attempted suicide. And it states that in the inquest. Does anybody have any of this information? You know, and nobody did an investigation, so there was never any information given at the inquest. Not a report, not any witness statements from the sheriff who made statements in the newspaper stating that there were witnesses that watched her do this and walk on the tracks and did it so precisely that nobody could save her. None of these statements are in any of the inquests. Not one single. The Lake County Waukegan police, only one person showed up who knew nothing about the case and just brought whatever he had. There was never any investigation whatsoever because they wanted to just rule it as a suicide. You know, how many other suicides did they just rule out as a suicide and actually weren't suicides? You know, have these ever been investigated? These people, you know, once it's called a suicide, and if you don't dispute the inquest, then it stays a suicide. You know, but you can dispute it. You can dispute it, and you can give the jury and the judge a different perspective, a different view. This was never done in my sister's case. There was one person who went there and represented my sister Cheryl, and that was her ex-husband. You know, and in all retrospect, he didn't know her like we all knew her. She contacted her family 2 days prior to her death, stating to every single one of the people that she talked to in her family that she was in trouble and that she had seen too much. She discussed the drug bust in Lake County, Waukegan, Illinois on the April 7th, 1988, and I believe that was in the newspapers then. This case needs to be investigated, and these people that are mentioned in my sister's inquest need to be investigated. Why did Carlos Whitlock pick my sister up that day? Why did he bring her down to the tracks that morning? Why did he do that? And why was she dead 8 minutes after he was witnessed with her? That is the question. And nobody seems to have any answers because nobody has ever investigated this case. Nobody has ever even looked at it. I did send it to Chicago's missing cases and have not heard anything back. Nothing. They have not responded. I've sent it to other places, no response. It's almost like this is just a non-existent individual that lived in Lake County, Waukegan, Illinois for 8 months of her life and died there. And the authorities, investigators back then in 1988 did nothing. The judge said in her inquest, if we were to subpoena the entire Lake County, Waukegan, Illinois Police Department, it would shut down the entire department. And how sad that my sister's death was dismissed in such a fashion that she never once again was even considered. Her case never even considered to be investigated in 33 years. There are facts in this case that place Carlos Whitlock with my sister 8 minutes prior to her death at the train tracks. And not one person is doing a single thing about it. Not one investigation has transpired. And I believe that needs to happen. And to find out if there were any more deaths within that station in Lake County, Waukegan, Illinois, at the train tracks, how many more deaths occurred there? And they considered them just a suicide. You know, these are facts that need to be examined. And I don't know how else to get this case investigated. It's remained open. You must understand. This case remained open until investigated, and it states that in the inquest from the judge and jury. This case stays open until investigated to determine whether or not it is a homicide or a suicide. I would personally love to get phone calls from Lake County, Waukegan, Illinois' homicide detectives stating, we are investigating your sister's case. We are going to make sure we determine one way or another. And instead of just this dead silence of not knowing a damn thing about what can occur and how it can occur and how it can transpire to go forward to be investigated. These are my goals, and I am going to continue to update. I'm going to continue to keep trying to get this investigated and to find out how individuals can be held accountable for their actions in this case. You know, the share of I would love to know if there were any statements, any reports, anything that was given or done by the police chief at that the acting police chief at that time. You know, was there any witness statements? You know, if not, then that's probably why this police chief was not in the in the inquests, in the 2 inquests that were performed. He was never mentioned, none of these things. Laura Littner witnessed Carlos Whitlock stating that my sister Cheryl Ann Miller Bluma would pay for holding out on him. He followed through with that threat, and I believe he put her on those tracks, and I believe somehow or another her inebriation played a part in that. I don't know if he got her so intoxicated from the time he picked her up to the time he had her. I don't know the precise time that she was picked up by Carlos Whitlock. It doesn't state in there. It does state that he absolutely picked her up with a unidentified black male. And the only thing that comes to my mind is Hector DeJesus was with him that day and picked Cheryl up. Because Hector DeJesus was Maria Chavez's common law husband, so it states in the newspaper. I don't know if that's fact. A lot of these, Laura Littner was also, she stated that she was Carlos Whitlock's boyfriend, but Carlos Whitlock is a pimp, okay? Did he really have girlfriends? I don't believe that that would be the case. I believe that he had prostitutes and that he maintained them and that he handled them. I believe that Laura Littner may have also been one of those prostitutes, you know, and that Cheryl went to her that morning, and Laura Littner stated that Cheryl was afraid. She was scared, and she was upset, but she doesn't know why. I honestly believe Laura Littner does know why. I do believe that, 100%. I believe she knows why, and I believe she knows why Carlos Whitlock picked her up. You know, these are things that are unanswered. Nobody really, this was not investigated. This is still not investigated. This remains open. And again, you know, this is a 33-year-old cold case that nobody even looked at. You know, so you're going to hear verbally from me first about this case, you know, and the details that I have about this case that nobody else even had or knew about, you know, and the fact that it's in her inquest that she did call home. It was stated that she was scared, she was upset, and, you know, for Lake County, Waukegan, Illinois, to immediately call it up as a suicide, you know, I don't know any person, one person who's going to go out there and commit suicide and call back home to where they're from to get their birth certificate. You know, you have to understand, prior March 28th, she lost all of her belongings in a fire. Everything she had, it was gone. So she had to request that birth certificate. Usually takes about a week for mail to arrive. She got it there on the 8th in Lake County, Waukegan, Illinois. You know, so it wasn't suicide. It was not suicide, and she knew her death was coming by Carlos Whitlock. I believe she knew it. I believe she was fearful of it, and I believe that she was calling home to let everybody know how much she loved them. And I believe that there was intent because she held out on Carlos for the money, possibly even drugs. Possibly, you know. I am going to stay hopeful and continue to update you on everything that I have and or get or receive. But I am in hopes to contact Lake County, Waukegan, Illinois Police Department today and talk to a homicide detective and see if there's a way to get this investigated. I don't know what the outcome will be. I don't know if Carlos Whitlock is alive. We can't find him on TruthFinder anywhere. So that's you know, and this Mary Bell. Who is Mary Bell? And why was she named in my sister's inquest? You know, did they mistakenly not mention Maria Chavez? Because they did mention the shooting in the tavern, which would be Maria Chavez in my sister's inquest. But where did Mary Bell come from? Is this another person that was killed on Lake County, Waukegan, Illinois train tracks by the train? It could very well be. I don't know. I just know that there will be another part to this. So stay tuned for part 3. Thank you for following this with me. And if you need, you know, share this as much as you possibly can around the world, because you never know. You never know what individuals are out there that could come forward and have information regarding my sister Cheryl Ann Miller Bluma's case. Okay? I again implore Lake County, Waukegan, Illinois Homicide Department to please investigate this case and locate these people that are involved and named in my sister's inquest. And I totally understand that some of these people may be deceased. Some people may be deceased. It was 33 years ago. So I don't know the outcome of this, but I hope that there will be an outcome rather than just a cold case that no one knew about. A woman that nobody heard of. A death that nobody knew about. These details are vital because, I mean, what if it was a serial killer, you know, or something like that? And, you know, how many other people have died this way? Posed on those tracks, waiting for that train to come and kill them. I don't think it's a human feasible thing to do, you know, and my sister would never do something like that. And I know it. I know her. She was gone through her childhood ripped from her as a child, you know. So, you know, the strengths that she got from having to overcome so much in her young life. You know, she was 25 years old. She was just 25. You know, she'd only been in Lake County, Waukegan, Illinois, 8 months of her life and ended up dying there. I can tell you, my sister would have not gone to Lake County, Waukegan, Illinois to kill herself. Okay, that's not the case. This case remains open, and it states it needs to be investigated to determine whether or not it was homicide or suicide. We still wait. You know, I have everything I have, and I'm still looking for more. I'm always looking for more because I know there is more out there. I know it. And I know that things tie into one another. And I know that Maria Chavez and my sister Cheryl Ann Miller Bluma were together that morning and ate together at Jordy's hot dog stand. And parted ways there, you know, and later on both died that same day. And I believe that Hector DeJesus was with Carlos Whitlock that day, picked my sister up, and then Carlos Whitlock handled Maria. I believe that they saw something, knew something, were involved with this drug bust, and I believe that their fate ended with these two men. And I believe that something needs to be done about it. And I believe that there should be resolution to this instead of unknowns. Thank you. Stay tuned for part 3. Have a pleasant day.